Hey everyone, thanks for joining us tonight for Parenting in the Trenches, Cultural Perspectives. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Tanya Farron.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Dr. Qureshi here. I'm your other host for Parenting in the Trenches. And I can't believe we're on the 11th month of Parenting in the Trenches.
Right?
Dr. Tanya, this was like last year we were talking about doing this, and we are almost done with the year. It's so amazing. So amazing how we've been able to, devote some time into a very, very important topic, which is parenting, and how we've been able to collaborate and bring a lot of different topics up for discussion in this live podcast. So, with that, I think today is a very, very special topic as well, cultural perspectives. And with that, we have some amazing guest speakers. I think we should just bring them on all at once. There's so much to talk about. We don't want to waste any time.
We're not wasting time tonight. No way. No way. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome. So, Dr. Tanya, I don't think me and you need any introductions, right?
Yeah,
for those that have been following Parenting in the Trenches, you guys know what we do, but we would love to have some introduction for our guest speakers today. So I guess we can start with Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I am a licensed master social worker and a licensed clinical therapist, and I am blessed to have two children of my own. I have a 14-year-old and my baby's about to be 10. Nice. So I'm very sad. But I got a couple weeks left of my under 10-year-old, and then we're going to head into preteens for that one. And it's all a different realm of development from that point on. So,
awesome. which is again, parenting journey. Mm-hmm. It looks very different for different age groups. So we're happy to have you here and for you to be able to talk about those experiences too.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Tiffany.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tiffany Tubman Mathis. I'm a licensed mental health therapist, a public health practitioner, a community engagement and operations leader. Just 20 years in the healthcare arena and in community. I'm focused on healing and transformation. I am also an upcoming new author. More to come about that. But I am 57-year-old Black woman, a wife, a mother of an amazing 37-year-old daughter. I am someone who was deeply shaped culturally, spiritually, emotionally by growing up in the church and raised by a single mother. So I'm so happy to be here today, just really showing up as all of me and ready to have the conversation. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for that awesome introduction. And I could not have guessed, Tiffany, that your daughter was 37.
Yeah. Hopefully she's watching. She told me to not wear the chain, but I'm wearing it anyway. But yeah.
Well, you look great.
Great. Thank you.
Lorianne.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Lorianne Brown. I am a therapist. I am a mother of a beautiful 11-year-old girl. I have many hats. I'm an author. I do a little life coaching as well here and there. I specialize in trauma. And just as everyone else, here on the healing journey as well.
Hey, and did you mention your children's book, Lorianne?
Oh, yeah. That's
she always forgets that one. She is a published author, guys.
I'm a published author. I have a devotional and I have a children's book as well. And I have more things that I'm currently working on as well.
Congratulations.
That's pretty awesome. Thank you.
Such a pleasure to have you, Lorianne, again. And then last but not least, Brianna, you are all the way from Texas with Sarah.
Yes, I am. I'm in Houston, Texas, the best place to be in Texas. But yeah, I'm a therapist. I specialize with parents, coincidentally, but also preteens and teens. And even though my daughter, she just turned 14 months, I still feel like a new mom because it's still the beginning stages and everything comes with new challenges. Um, think I can mimic kind of what some of the other ladies have said, especially growing up from a single mom and, you know, just watching another woman have to figure out how to do things herself and just trying to navigate the challenges of that and making sure that, you know, you're being the best parent and the best mom that you can while also healing from the things that you've experienced as well. So I think, you know, even though I still feel like I'm kind of pulling my hair out and don't really know what I'm doing, I'm interested to see what new age perspective I can give because it's hard. It is hard, but I love it.
Yeah, parenting is one of those journeys, you know, like Dr. Tanya and I have described it. It's a roller coaster you cannot get off of. Once you hop on it, once you have decided that you're gonna get on this journey of parenting, that roller coaster, once you hop on, there is no ending, and it's just either it's smooth or it goes up a hill and comes right back down. It may slow down, other times it may go really, really fast. But it's something you can't hop off of. Yet, even with roller coasters, right? If we use that analogy, you have this thrill that happens when you're on the ride. Right? When you finally get off of it, you have this rushing feeling going down. And to me, I think that we would describe that as when you and in your parenting journey, you are able to look at your kids and see how they blossom to be wonderful adults, is when you can take a breather and then the roller coaster just kind of cruises if everything goes well. Right, Dr. Tanya? I think you're in the cruising phase right now. So tell us.
For the most part, I'm in the cruising phase. I would say yes, it's awesome. And I just want to shout out, you know, the people in our audience. Thank you, Tracy, Philip, Sharon, Linda, Jamie, Christy, that are here tonight. And anyone else that's just listening in, drop your name in and where you're from. Any questions that you might want to have for these ladies that have joined us tonight to talk about cultural perspectives. I just wanted to bring this up. I actually have this. My mom gave me this, right? From one mom to the other. It's the same phrase. The days are long, but the years are short. And that's exactly what we're talking about. That roller coaster ride. There are some days, ladies, it is a long day with those kids, isn't it? And then you're like, oh, but then it's wonderful. And then it's long. And then it's wonderful. And then all of a sudden you go, where did the time go? I have a 25-year-old and a 28-year-old. What happened, right?
Yeah, you look back and you're like, wow, I can't believe that much time has passed away.
Right?
Yes. So with that, guys, today's topic is cultural perspectives, and it is very close and dear to my heart. As you know, my own identity, I'm a Pakistani American Muslim female. Okay. So I think for me, my parents' parenting ways were definitely interesting, to say the least. So in this clinical work that I do, we see a lot of parents, a lot of individuals who often talk about their family of origin, talk about their parenting beliefs and values. So what we really wanted to do today was get some diversity in the parents that we have as guest speakers and really just hear it from the people who are actually doing it, right? So with that, what I want to do is kind of talk a little bit about what culture means to us. How do we define culture? What does that really look like? How do you interpret it when someone says, what's your cultural background? So who wants to take a shot at that?
I can go. Whenever the question of cultural background, I'm Jamaican. And that's what I would tell them. I'm Jamaican. And in terms of the other aspects of that, we are very ambitious people. We're not taught to give up easily. The sky is never the limit, and we're also very stubborn, which is very negative and pains us sometimes. I said sometimes we're very stubborn, and we're very hard workers. Growing up, when I started work, I don't think I've ever had just one job. To this day, just never ever just had one job, and it was a joke amongst people that met me if I told them I had more than one job, I'd say, "Oh, typical Jamaican." So that would be part of my cultural experience and how I would describe that.
Yeah. Well, you are not the only one that has had more than one job at a time. So we're definitely going to see some overlap in different cultures as well.
Mhm.
All right.
For me, I would describe my culture. Back when I was younger, it was mixed, but now the technical term is biracial. I grew up with two biracial parents, so it was a different perspective instead of having one parent that was one culture and the other. So, with my mom, she grew up with a Caucasian mom and an African American father, and my dad is the opposite. And so growing up that way, because she's born in the 70s, that's coming off the time of, racism, and especially we live in the South. So they are true to these, origins and difficulties. And so one thing that I was always raised into just having the mindset was that you don't let people put you in a box of choosing one or the other. You're both. And so that comes with different, unique insights, because especially down here, they like to put you in positions where you have to choose one or the other. And that was just never the case for me. I've always just been in really just environments where I just get along with everyone and, just kind of go about a melting pot of just having different friends and experiences that way. So I would say that's kind of my culture.
Nice. I can definitely relate to that, Brianna. Yet I think my experiences were a little bit different in the sense that as a Pakistani Muslim young girl, like moving to the US, it was feeling like you didn't fit in either in the Black culture or the white culture. There was a huge dichotomy with it in terms of what I dealt with outside in my peer groups. Yet when I actually came home, it wasn't about whether I fit into the Black culture or the white culture. It was about, well, am I Pakistani enough or am I too American? So there were like two different things going on. I was dealing with the racial differences outside in the middle, but then I was dealing with the ethnicity and the nationality piece of it. So at home, I would get messages of, don't act like this, you're going to be too American. And then when I would go outside, it would be, oh, what are you eating? Why do you have an accent? Why do you wear this? So I dealt with a lot of identity things that I'm sure will come up and we'll explore and talk more about as well in this session.
Yeah, I heard the lights flickering on in my head. Like, yep, similar, very similar.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I didn't know, Sarah, I know you took your time out, was going to jump in, but Sarah, did you wanted to?
Yeah, I was just going to say that coming from my background, I would say culture is, it doesn't necessarily have to do with where you come from. It's whatever you align yourself with too. And so when you asked the question, I got really introspective because yes, I am in Texas and I'm not going to argue about which city's better, Houston or DFW. I ain't doing all of that because I'm not actually from Texas, even though I've lived here most of my life. I'm from California. And so when people ask about my culture and my belief system, I attain my upbringing from California. And so it's a completely different dynamic than what is happening in my own children's experiences. And so those are conversations of, well, why do my friends get to experience this and this and this and I don't? Well, let's have a different conversation about what that means for us and where our beliefs in. And this is what I think. What do you think? And having those cultural conversations about variance between beliefs still happens, even if you are living in, what is a stereotypical living, if you will, like as a Caucasian woman. Like there's still cultural things that you kind of have to dig into, and though they may not be as extreme, it's still things that you have to have those discussions and have the introspection. Sorry if you hear my cat, they're playing in the background. It's very distracting. So those cultural perspectives really do still play a part. It's just how loud you put them within your world too.
Yeah, totally agree. And as an African-American woman, so there is the it's evolving for us, definitely because the culture being shaped by the enslaved Africans, right? So have that. So it's a love-hate relationship tree. So you have that coming in that is still shaped by the systems they're growing up with, whether it's macro or microaggressions having to deal with. So the culture, so that's that culture, but also the culture in my home and being raised and what that is and what it is in the neighborhood. I think what you talked about, both Dr. Q and Brianna, even within intra-racism, so even in my Black neighborhood, even in sometimes in the hood, if you're light skinned, dark skinned, I had to deal with that. So growing up with that, also dealing with that, excuse me, that struggle at times as a young girl growing up in certain neighborhoods. But what really drove us, at least for my family, was around religion. So it was more so around Pentecostal church, and that really shaped my mother. And quite frankly, was now that we know a term for a protective factor for her, raising us in some challenging neighborhoods, and just challenging circumstances. So for me, it's the neighborhoods, is where I grew up, is also with the church for me is as a culture being shaped by the African enslaved ancestry for me.
Yeah.
And myself, I was raised in a blue collar family. None of my grandparents, I don't think any of them went to school past 6th grade. So very blue collar, working in factories. One of my grandfathers was a painter. My other two worked in factory, or other 3 grandparents worked in factories. My father is 100% Italian. His parents were born in the United States, but the grandparents had immigrated from Italy. And so they didn't speak any English. And so living in that culture, my mom's side of the family, she doesn't really have a strong heritage background. She's a blend of German and English. And, but very different cultures of the families when we would go to holidays with one set of grandparents and the other set of grandparents. And, there was some tension between my parents, with my dad being full-blood Italian. That was challenging for my mom's parents to accept that. And so there was a lot of tension with that for sure. And different structures, different expectations in the families. The grandparents, one set was more, the children are, seen and not heard, right? And the other one was, oh, let's immerse you and play games with you and do all of these different things together. So very different upbringing, but very blue collar, which also, has a mindset, right? That is cultural mindsets of, maybe not being very open to other races and cultures. And that was hard, I think, growing up as a kid to understand, why would they be this way, when we weren't raised that way. And so, lots of different changes like that.
Yeah. I mean, each and every one of you have described a component of what culture means, right? Like it can mean so many different things in so many ways. Yet I think when we talk about culture, most people divert to which country you come from, right? What's your background, what your ethnicity is. Yet culture is so much more than that. So for me, I think if we unpack what culture really is, I've learned to understand it as our social, the things that encompass parts of our identity. So where are you from, right? Nationality, ethnicity, race, class. We're also talking about religion. Religion has come up. We're talking about abilities. We're talking about sect in religions as well, right? Then not to mention our neighborhoods, where we live, our community, what church we go to or what mosque we go to or synagogue. Like culture encompasses so much of our identities that the list can go on and on and on, right? So as we're talking about that, one of the things that I guess what I want to ask you guys is, when it comes down to parenting, right? And you reflect on the parenting that your parents did, what is one thing as you look back now that annoyed you about their parenting, but now you're like, I'm glad they did it? That it could be a value, it could be a ritual, it could be anything. So, I mean, for me, I would tell you, let me give you my example, okay? So, my house was very driven by gender and Islam, which is what really pushed me away from my culture, too, because I saw that Islam was always used to tell me what not to do, right? So, I remember when it came down to gender stuff, okay, my mom would always tell me and my sister to do domestic things. I had to learn how to do anything and everything revolving the household and the cooking and everything. I hated it. But as I got older, especially with the cooking, I'm so glad she did it, because now I take a lot of pride when I do cook. And a lot of times people judge me and think that I can't cook because I'm a successful doctor. So there's also this stereotype about women who are career oriented and successful, that they don't have the domesticated skills. And I've actually had that experience at family gatherings where people have been like, oh, Misbah, you know how to cook? And I'm like, yeah, honey, I can cook up a feast all day, every day. So when I look back, I thank my mom for teaching me how to cook, because I don't have to starve.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say mine is probably this commitment work ethic. Like, my parents were very big on, you made a commitment, you're following through with this, or you have to keep pushing forward, keep trying. It's gonna, whether it was working through a hard assignment or going to school or anything like that, it's going to get better. Keep pushing forward. And I really feel like that came from kind of that factory work of my grandparents. They were on their feet all day. They worked very hard physically all day. And I think that really is something that, was kind of a pain at the time, but I'm really glad I have that, Tiffany, I see you nodding your head too.
Yeah, definitely. For me, definitely mom was hard worker, again, single mother, but she taught me, you start, you finish, being strong and committed to that, in a sense of independence very early, I think. Tanya, you and I probably grew up around the latchkey time, a lot of responsibility. We used to we went to the store by ourselves at 7 years old. That's just what we did. Anyway, the point is, so that was for me. But for me, it was because of the religion, Muslim religion, but the spiritual part, for me, prayer. Mom prayed all the time, all day, every day. And, I'm like, oh my gosh, are we still praying? So for me, just the mantle of prayer was something culturally, and also was a strength that kind of like, really, mom? But now today, since she passed away in 2021, is something oh my gosh, I hold on to dearly. And it is the faith that keeps me. So something that when I was younger, like, really, mom, we had to pray about everything. And now, like, yes, I need to pray. So that really sustained me.
Love that.
I'm going to piggyback off of that. Growing up, one of the things my mother would do, because my father was in America. He left, I think, when I was about, I'd say like 3 or 4. So she raised us, and church. I could not stand going to church. You had to be in church about 4 days a week. I could not stand it. And Sunday services twice a day. They got the nerve to wake us up early in the morning to go to church. And then you don't have time to come back home. So you have to stay at church until the next service starts at 6 o'clock. And you're not getting out until probably 9, 10 o'clock. Mind you, there's school on Monday morning. I could not stand church. So of course, when I got older, I stopped going to church because I couldn't stand it. But I'm very, very grateful that she instilled that in me, because as Tiffany said, prayer and being able to lean on God in various situations. And that has been like a deep rooted anchor in my life. So, that I'm great. Couldn't stand it at the time. Even now, my daughter, she don't like it, and that's okay. but it has helped my life so much in so many areas, and it has really helped me to be successful, and it's continued to do so. That way I have that relationship with God and can do that. So I'm grateful that she really
Love
did
that.
that.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think for me, the biggest, just because a lot of the women in my family have gone through abuse and just not feeling strong enough to like have their voice, or when they use their voice, it's not heard. My mom was always very adamant about telling me to like speak up, stand up for yourself, and just that huge independence, and making sure that no matter what you do, whether you get married or anything like that, you always have something solidified for yourself, because anything could happen tomorrow. And so I think that's the biggest thing. I think she pushed us so hard that now it's like, you can't really tell me anything because, you know, I have my own stuff. And yeah, but is very, very big on independence and making sure that you have your ducks in a row and you stay on top of everything.
And
Sarah.
I think that's mine is very interesting, talking about the cultural perspectives piece, right? Because on the other end, something that I learned a lot of lessons from my parents, kind of the hard way, if you would, right? Like we come from experiencing things that we wouldn't necessarily do and do it differently. But one thing that really stands out to me from a cultural perspective, my parents were very big on, if you are living under one roof, it takes every single person under that roof to make it function. And so you all have responsibilities under this roof. And oh my gosh, I hate it. As a kid, I felt like you only had me to do your housework. No, in reality, we are actually here to like coexist together, and it's all of our responsibility to do that.
Love that.
That I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I was partly thinking like, you know, there are two-parent household, there are single-parent households, right? There are also grandparent households, and then there are blended extended families, right? So for us right now, each one of us is talking about parenting, right? Our experiences with our own parents. Yet there are certain cultures out there where your biological parents aren't just your parents. Your grandparents are your parents as well. Your auntie and uncle are your parents as well. So Sarah, when you talk about coexistence, that's very, very important, because depending on what people's beliefs are and how they want to parent can either bring you together but also cause stress and discourse as well, right? So in this work, and Dr. Tanya, I know as an educator you see this as well, it's when you have two different cultures per se, right, that have separated and now they're trying to co-parent, that could be a challenge in itself.
Yeah. Zara drops in here too, even interfaith relationships, right? That presents a lot of challenges as well when you have that often. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Cultural pieces can definitely, they can make things, it can make it challenging for the families, you know, when they're blending, for sure. Yes.
Yeah. So I guess I'm thinking, what was one thing that was challenging, that has been challenging for you guys now that you are on your own journey of parenting? And you're like, this is what my parents were talking about the whole time.
I don't know that it's a good, because I mean, I think it's just the human development piece of it, right? Is now I wouldn't say that my parents necessarily educated me on this, but through my education, I realized that the behaviors of my child are so little have to do with me. Like it has to do with what you're experiencing, your world, your homework, your friends, your social circle. And if I am not creating a space where we can have those conversations, then it almost becomes too like, how do I guide my child if I'm not providing that safe space to have a discussion? For example, you know, a lot of things, and I don't know how different cultures are dealing with this, but I see a lot. I also have a little bit of a side gig in a behavioral ER. And so I see adolescents there too. And we're having a lot of gender crisis and a lot of like, there's things that came out of left field that, you know, we in our generation wouldn't have even thought about. But if we're not opening that discussion, then how are we educating them to think freely or think for themselves or figure out their own values and self-worth and create a really solid foundation before they get out into the world?
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
want to piggyback
generations
off of
have a lot
Yeah.
of differences that come up.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm Sarah. Like, how do I show up as a parent today? And while, you know, Lorianne talked about the religion and church, same thing. While we appreciate that and that upbringing, I don't know. I'm not saying I don't know. I wasn't able to really navigate big feelings, you know, with limited tools. So I was not that emotionally available, safe space for my daughter, that because I didn't get that growing up, didn't know what it was until I actually went to school. I was like, oh, okay, this is what this means. So, and also through her as an adult growing up and being able to articulate that and have the language for it. So, you know, so right now, how I show up today and later was able to parent my mother, to help her understand, to, you know, give the space and how to let go of control. And the big thing, how to apologize as a parent. You know, think that was really big for me and my mom for certain things. You know, we could give a grace or whatever, just apologizing and forgiving. So how I show up today at 50 something, well, 30 something versus a 20 something with this, you know, 7-year-old is totally different. But again, just being able to, it has evolved, you know, as I grew, as I healed, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I think to piggyback off of that, I think like Sarah said, it's holding the space. You know, my little one is so small right now, so I'm constantly replaying the possibilities of like what's going to happen when she goes off into the world, and especially I think we were kind of talking about it earlier of, you know, the kind of like the light skin, dark skin conversation. I know that that one is like at the forefront because you know, I'm biracial, but my daughter, her dad is from Africa, and so she's much darker complexion than me. And I constantly rack my brain about, you know, kids are mean these days, and you know, they say things, and I'm just worried about having those types of conversations with her if she, you know, has a situation, because at some point she will. And so I think it's holding the space for just whatever comes up, because even though you can't prepare yourself for it 100%, you just need to know at some point they're going to encounter their own struggles and challenges, and you just kind of have to be prepared for whatever is going to come, because it's going to happen at some point.
You know, Dr. Qureshi and I have been talking a lot this whole year, basically, about building your parenting village. And Brianna, what you were talking about to me is, you know, when you're talking about that and your child is very young, but building that parenting village now is important, because there are going to be things that are going to come to you that you're not going to have the answers for. And you're going to want to be able to, you know, go in and find that person to help guide you in that, whether it be your therapist. That's where we went. You know, and everyone's like, oh, you're an educator, you should know I don't know all of the answers. No one has all of the answers, but
you need the coach. You need the unbiased,
Yes.
like, just
Yes.
listen to me. Am I missing something?
Right. And so I think that's something that I kind of evolved and grew and learned about. And I still today, you know, there is a parenting of adult children. You know, we talk about this also, Dr. Q and I, that parenting is a lifetime commitment. It's the first chapter in my parenting book. It is forever, you know, and even when I come across things, you know, I don't want to step over a boundary, or I may need to set a boundary with my adult children and their spouses, or whatever the case may be. I might go to a peer of mine who's already been through this and ask them some questions. And so that's something that I think is important to kind of keep a kind of an open mind about as you're going through life raising your kids.
So
think on-
true. and again, just like any village, right? You want, it's a stable village, right? Because what we have in our village. And for me, my daughter's great grandmother was literally a co-parent as growing up, in my younger years. And so totally agree with you about the village and who we have to kind of support that, even as we're raising, or not raising, but mentoring our adult children as well. So I agree with that, Tanya.
I think parenting for me has been experiential, and I saw a post. I think it was last year or something. It says that kids don't realize that as parent we're actually growing with them, and that really, it got me, because I'm like, wait a second, I've never had a 9-year-old before, never had a 10-year-old before, never had a 1-year-old before. So every stage of her life, I've never been there before, and she's teaching me how to take care of her, as well as I'm learning and I'm teaching her what the world is about. And in raising her, one of the things that I'm most adamant about, I think, growing from a child, is I need her to have her own voice, respectfully, of course, but I need her to be able to communicate with me if this is uncomfortable. And I need her to be able to trust me that you can come to mommy about anything, even if it's uncomfortable and you don't like it. And I've done things intentionally since she's like 1. I've been doing things intentionally since she was 1, so she's able to come. And where growing up, if something is wrong, my parents would give me a negative reaction. When she would come to me, I would temper myself, hold my tongue, and just ask, okay, why did you do what you did? What are the lessons, consequences? If you do this thing, there's a consequence. There's a negative and a positive consequence to everything that we do in life. And so if she does something that I know you're not supposed to do that, I'm not getting loud. I'm not screaming. I'm not getting angry. I'm going down to her level, because I purposely want to know, why did you do that? Where was your thought process? And I've been doing that with her forever. So now she flips it on me. Mommy, why did you do that?
And I just want to add to that, she's
Yeah.
never been 9 before either. And that's the part that we forget about, right? They've never been that age before, and they don't really, they're testing the waters, no matter what that age is, of seeing, what is this like for me? What can I get away with? What can't I do? What can I do?
Precisely. And I try not to be, because in our culture, there is a lot of aggressive parenting. A lot of aggressive parenting, and there's a lot of you be seen and not heard, and there's just too much negativity around it, where you're afraid to speak to your elders over thing. When you see them, they're talking, your mouth is zipped, or you make sure you're not seen. And I remember I was pregnant, I said I never want her to grow up like that. So I'm going to take intentional steps so she knows she's safe in this world. She can come to mommy with anything, and she can also voice her opinions, because I did not want her to go into this world and people force themselves on her, whether it's their ideologies, whatever it is. I need her to be solid in who she is, and picking from everything and then making that decision, not just because I say you're this, that's what you're going to be, that's who you're going to be, that's how you're going to think. I never wanted that for her. It's backfired so many times, but I'm okay. I'm learning to kind of deal with it as she grows, and as I learn more about who she is at every stage of her life.
Yeah, Lorianne, where were you when I was growing up? Because that's what I needed.
I think we all needed
every
that.
word was so beautiful. I'm just like, notes.
Yeah, and what's important to note in what you're saying here is what my takeaway is. First and foremost is that parenting is very experiential. With the families that I work with, often I'm very direct in letting them know, hey, your child doesn't have the same parent when you have your first child, your second child, or third child. Every child in the household does not have the same parent. You are not the same person when you gave birth to your first child, second, third, fourth, and fifth. Even if you try to repeat some of those things that worked, you still have evolved and changed. And sad to say, when they say the first child is the guinea pig, I am a true believer in that, because I felt like I was the guinea pig. I remember wanting to go to prom, and I had to lie my way to get there. I took down to my sister. She got her dress picked out. She had the limo, the whole 9 yards. I was the guinea pig, right? And then parents learn and grow, obviously. But Lorianne, yes, so it's experiential. And I think the other piece that you're really talking about is intentionality.
Yes.
You were very intentional in making sure that the things that didn't work for you as a child, you did not pass down.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That requires self-awareness. That requires your own journey of healing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So we can kind of transition the conversation to some of the clinical work we're doing with families. When we see families in front of us, those things are not present. Sadly, a lot of the parents are passing down those generational traumas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And they expect their children to listen and do certain things, but they're showing up in the ways that their parents showed up.
Because I think,
So for example, we're talking about culture. There's a lot of cultures that say, don't speak back to adults.
Yeah.
You don't have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
But kids nowadays, they do have a voice and they do express themselves, right?
Mm-hmm. I think just too many people don't treat, when we see kids, and this is one of the things that I had to work on. When we see kids, we don't see human beings. And that's something I had to work on. I see a child, that's a little human being right there. And I need respect. I'm going to give that little child respect, and I think it's a part of breaking your own pride to think that because we're grown, we're adults, we're high and mighty, and we direct them and they have to go, but they have their own will, they have their own mindset. And instead of us being in a domineering position as parents or as adults, it's you're training them and they can eat the meat and throw away the bone type thing, or they could find their own little way. So I think and I've seen this across the families that I've worked with. We're not seeing the children as human beings, just like us. They're just younger and smaller, but the very things that we're handling and dealing with on a daily basis, they're going through that as well. And we've had experience and we forget that we were there at one point. That's another thing that I see, that we forget that we were also children. We forget that we were also 10, 16, 18. And we forget that we've had tantrums. We forget that we had disagreements. We forget that when our parents scolded us and we couldn't talk, we go in the room and cuss them out of the room. And we call them all sorts of names behind closed doors, but we would never do to their face. So I think we forget that as parents and as adults. So the children, they don't get the respect that they need. And if they don't get respect, what are they going to do? They're going to tantrum. They're going to do everything that they're not supposed to do because we're not hearing and we're not listening to them.
Well, I think that it's really interesting too about, for example, our kids are all, at one point or another, all of our children are going to come across a teacher within their education that they don't get along with for whatever reason. It's just, they don't click with them. And my son is going through that right now. And he's constantly asking me, will you get him, mom, get the teacher? And I'm like, okay, well, tell me your version of what happened. And he tells me, and he's like, I didn't turn in my homework. Okay, so you're mad that she was upset and held you back from recess because you forgot to turn. You're mad that there was a consequence to your actions rather than, so maybe the conversation, you may still not get your way, but if the conversation is your teacher treated you rudely, then let's talk about that and you can advocate yourself for the right way. But I think that where some of the wiring is getting crossed too is we're asking our kids to have really adult conversations to teach them independence without the follow through piece. And sometimes it can go off rail and either go, well, now we're getting over exaggerated about whatever experience they're experiencing, or we're not teaching them how to like have those discussions respectfully, because you hear about teachers, right? Like I hear it on social media all the time about, the kids aren't listening, and and we can get into the schematics of all of that all day long. But I think that part of the conversation needs to be around that ideology of we need to also be teaching them that respect is absolutely a two-way street, but how you have conversations with adults respectfully to advocate for yourself is also important, because you can't just stand up and start screaming when you feel slighted.
Well, and that behavior has to be modeled. That's one of the things that it has to be modeled and it has to be practiced. So if you're flying off the handle at the grocery checkout lady because she rang up your avocado twice or whatever the case may be, your child is going to learn from that. And so how we handle conflict as adults is what our kids are learning how to handle conflict. And then we do have to coach them. We have to practice with them. Okay, pretend like I'm your teacher. And I know we could go on this topic forever. I'm an educator, so we could definitely go on this topic. But, I think the modeling piece and all of the things that we've been talking about, even so far tonight, we've learned from watching the actions of our parents, whether it's something that we are grateful that we learned how to do, or it's something that isn't something we want to continue in our own parenting practice.
Dr. Tanya, you bring up a very powerful word right here, which is coaching. One of the things that I consistently see as a family therapist is parents asking their children to do things that they cannot do or won't do themselves. They are asking them to regulate their emotions when they are unable to regulate themselves. And when we talk about emotions, Tiffany, you provided your example, right, about emotional intelligence and what was a safe place or not a safe place for you. That is very consistent in many, many cultures. It didn't matter what your background was. A lot of families, parents are struggling with self-expression and emotional management because they don't have the words to explain their experiences. Their emotions were shut down. They only learned how to lash out in anger because that's the emotion that was primary in the family. Yet now you have your kid who's going through things, right? Whether at school or at home, and they're symptomatic of the things that are going on in the house. You bring them to therapy and you want us to fix them, when in reality, the work is with the adults in the family.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that's where, Lorianne, when you say, it's experiential, I had to look at myself. That's where self-awareness is. You are role modeling and coaching emotional regulation, curiosity, and you're learning and growing the same way you mentioned, Tiffany. Sarah, you're challenging your kid versus getting on the bandwagon and saying, you know what, you're right, that teacher is horrible and has something against you, right? Brianna, you're curious about what colorism may look like for your child, right? Those are the things parents need to do to be successful in developing that relationship with their child, no matter what age they are.
Totally agree, Dr. Q. And I think we were talking about that clinical work with parents and in crossing cultures. I mean, you just said it, the emotional piece. And I know with my clients, we start with even naming the emotions.
Mhm.
So it's the name, So how they feel is more so when they're talking about is how they think. I'm like, no, how do you feel? Their
Mhm.
feelings. And we had y'all know the emotional chart, the emotional vocabulary, you got the circuit, all the wheel, right? So it's just even to that point that, to be able to have the language to talk about it, because we're dealing with parents who have unhealed childhood wounds, right? So that's what I'm seeing. They're repeating what they experience, right? And not because they want to, it's because, that's what they know. So that's a part of it, that the cue that we're all talking here. But those who are healing and understand, know better, do better, right? Still learning from our children, definitely still learning from my child, even at an early age. But yeah, so for me, it's around the emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, and again, dealing with unhealed childhood wounds as well.
Yeah,
I think,
absolutely.
Dr. Q, it's interesting, a lot of what you were saying about, how parents, they're putting all these expectations on their children to do certain things that they're not willing to do. And what I always like to give my parents when I'm working with them, if they're having challenges with their child, is that you're going to constantly need to be in a place where you have to put the mirror up to yourself. You can't you can't expect for them to do something, and you have to put the mirror up to yourself and be able to check yourself, just because you might be modeling something that they don't really understand. They see it from you. You're always going to be their first example of everything. And even, they have their own, like you said, their own minds, their own experiences, their own thoughts, beliefs, all of that. So I think that's something that, especially with me being so early on my parenting journey, is just making sure that I check myself on everything, because they see it and their perspective is just as important as yours.
Or even the longevity of doing that, Brianna. Like, you're in the beginning part and it feels so like everything is so urgent when you're so new being parent. And then you like relax into it and it's just, you still have to check in and be present as a parent and really have that internal perspection of where are my kids at right now? Is there anything I need to like invest a little bit more time into helping them develop, and have those discussions with them?
I know parenting is work, and I know we all know parenting is work. But I love that it has its reward, and I'm telling everybody about this. So my daughter the other day, um, we were supposed to go on a field trip, and I told her to go to bed at 11, and I fell asleep. I woke up at 1:30 something. I hear footsteps running up the stairs. She ran into her room and closed the door, and I just shook my head. And I went in the room. I said, "Okay, phone, iPad, now." And she's trying to rebut. I said, "Listen, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Just please." So she gave it to me. I said, 1 week. 2 days later, I asked her, why did she do that? So she said she was talking about something, said she was up studying. I said, "What do you mean?" Because she missed a day. So I'm like, "Okay, are you caught up on the work?" Because I'm checking. I don't see that you're missing anything. And she said she did it. I said, "When?" She's like, when I was up late." And I'm like, "Wait, you did that without being told?" And she was like, "Yes, I did. But of course I was watching YouTube." I said, "Yeah, I know." But I'm like, "You finished all 6 subjects?" And she said she did. And it was the most happiest moment. I said, "You know what? You go get your phone and your iPad back today." No more punishment. Because I'm like, wow.
And that's on being proactive.
I was like, "You're responsible." I was so happy. And I'm like, that right there, those were moments like that I really cherish, because sometimes I'm wondering, am I doing right by her? Am I doing the right thing? But when I see stuff like that, I'm like, thank you, Jesus. It's working. It's working, because the fruit is there. And yeah, of course, she got her stuff back. I don't even bother her right now. I said, enjoy your iPad on your phone. And just, I'm proud. I'm very, very happy, and I'm very proud of her. So it has its rewards, and those are the big rewards. You don't get them often, but when you do get them, like, I'm sharing this story with everybody because I'm so happy and I'm so excited. It was a proud mom moment. It's like, yes, what I'm doing is actually working, and this is her 10, 20 years from now. And I love that. She's not going to fail at life.
Right.
Well, what you brought up there, Lorianne, is, of course, a successful moment in your parenting, right? And I want to add to that for all, especially for all the parents that are out there. Okay. If you were to get anything out of this session, I want you to know that your kids actually want to listen to you.
They do.
You just need to communicate why they should do what you're asking them to do. So, what does that mean? That means I remember, like, just going back, right, for myself. I remember my parents would tell me certain things that I couldn't do. And their default answer was, because you're a Muslim girl, you just can't. That didn't make sense to me. Because I was like, the Islam that I know actually brought equality to women. So I don't know what you're talking about, mom and dad, right? So I rebelled. But then as I got older and I learned about Islam myself, it made sense to me. So one of the things that parents don't do is they tell you to do something, but they don't tell you the thought process about why is this helpful for you? So this is your bedtime. You got to go to sleep at 11 o'clock or 8 o'clock, let's just say. Why? Because in their mind, they're just thinking that's mom and dad trying to tell us what to do and we don't want to. Mm-hmm. But if you break it down to them on why it's important to get sleep, they will understand it.
It's very true.
That is true.
Very true.
Like the follow through the next day too of like, I'm sorry, of Lorianne, if she were like, because I notice it in my kids, right? They're more emotional the next day, obviously, because their brains aren't fully rested and they just hyper emotional. And so, sometimes they will borrow time on the weekends from their bedtime and then the next morning be crying. And I'm like, I know you're upset, but you need 8 hours of sleep. This is a body reaction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This consequence.
That's true.
Right.
And they don't see that. I mean, they don't. They just think kids literally think their parents want to make their life miserable. I'm telling you, that is actually a thought they have. They're like, they just don't want us to have fun, Dr. Q. They just they have nothing else to do.
And they do want, like you said, they do want to follow rules. They want structure. They want guidance. They want routine. They want you to tell them why you're doing things and that you love them. And, that's the reason behind it all. So I absolutely love this conversation. Those of you that are joining us, I just want to take just a minute to thank everyone in the audience. Thank you, Sharon Rose, for so much wonderful conversation with us tonight. We greatly appreciate you. Susan Lynn, thank you very much also for your contribution to today's live stream. Christy Williams, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nicole, so great to see you in the audience. We love having you join us for these events. Czar, thank you also. And Tracy. It's been great to see everyone, and Linda. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, and Lisa Fevick. It's been a great show. We're already down to 58 minutes into our show here. We've just got a couple minutes left. Did you want them to wrap up with something, Dr. Q?
Yeah, I think part of what I was thinking was one simple things you want the parents to know. Quick and simple.
If there's anything, stop underestimating your kids. They're a lot smarter than what you think they are. They get it. Stop underestimating them.
Yeah.
I'd say give them care and respect. The same way you would your CEO boss or someone that is a higher level of respect. That very same care and respect.
Yeah. I would say just listen. When you listen, you're going to hear things. You're going to understand.
Yeah, I was going to say, already assume they're going to be good people because they have you as parents.
Yeah.
Totally agree with everything that was said. And just being, I guess, the longest parent here for a child almost 40, that there's no perfect parent. There's only a present parent. And just one willing to repair when needed. Yeah,
I love that. And tell your kids you love them. Yeah, tell them you love them. They need to hear that from you. You don't want them going and seeking that other places. They need to hear that from you, that you love them. So,
And that you're proud of them.
yeah.
In a safe space, yes.
Lorianne, make sure you tell your daughter that if you haven't, because the whole world knows that you're proud of her.
Oh, she knows. Trust me, she knows.
Awesome. All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was such a pleasure. And we hope to be back next month with Parenting in the Trenches. And we'll see you guys after the Thanksgiving. Happy holidays to everyone.
Happy
Bye,
New Year.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.